The soft hum of Mara Calder's scanner was the only sound penetrating the thick canopy of Vesper Nine's eastern jungle. Morning dew still clung to the massive purple-veined leaves above her head, occasionally releasing fat droplets that splashed against her environment suit. Dr. Mara Calder paused, making a careful notation on her datapad as she cataloged yet another variant of the bioluminescent fungi that had become her latest obsession. Specimen 347b exhibits increased phosphorescence compared to northern varieties, she murmured into her recorder. Likely an adaptation to the reduced sunlight in this region due to the denser canopy. 6 months into her 3-year deployment on this remote outpost, and Mara still found herself enchanted by Vesper Nine's bewildering biodiversity. The verdant moon orbited a gas giant at the very edge of colonized space, far from the bustle of central systems and, more importantly, far from the watchful eyes of the Draken hegemony. The thought of the reptilian conquerors sent an involuntary shiver down her spine. In the century since humanity's first contact with the massive, scaled warriors, the galaxy had learned one primary lesson about the Draken. They respected only strength and considered mercy a weakness. Their iron-fisted rule extended across 12 systems now, with only remote outposts like Vesper 9 escaping direct oversight. Mara's communication device buzzed at her hip. "Calder here," she answered, not looking up from her specimen collection. "Dr. Calder." The stern voice of Captain Lynn Voss, colony governor, filled her ear. "Satellite picked up unusual energy signatures about 2 kilometers from your position. Possible weapons discharge." That got Mara's attention. She straightened, abandoning her fungi. "Weapons? Out here? There's nothing in this sector but jungle. Nevertheless, the readings are clear." Voss's voice carried the crisp efficiency that had kept Vesper 9's 30-person research team alive on this dangerous world. "Return to base immediately. I'm sending a shuttle to your coordinates."
"But I'm in the middle of—"
"That's an order. Doctor, we have reports of increased Draken patrol activity in this quadrant. If they're conducting exercises, I want all personnel clear of the area." Mara sighed, already packing her equipment. "Fine, but I need to retrieve my sensor array first. It's only about a half-kilometer east of me, and it contains 3 weeks of environmental data." The silence on the other end told her Voss was weighing the risk. "You have 20 minutes, the captain finally conceded. "Then I expect you at the extraction point. Voss out." The communication clicked off. Mara secured her sample case to her belt and began moving east, deeper into the jungle. The massive trees of Vesper 9 twisted toward the sky, their trunks wider than 3 humans standing side by side. Between them grew a tangled maze of vines and secondary growth, requiring Mara to carefully navigate with her machete. 17 minutes later, she spotted the blinking light of her sensor array perched on a fallen log. Relief washed over her as she hurried forward. The device was intact, which meant her research wouldn't suffer a significant setback. As she knelt to disconnect it, a sound froze her in place. A low, rasping breath, almost a growl, came from behind a dense cluster of ferns, several meters to her right. Mara slowly reached for the pulse pistol at her hip. Standard issue for all colony personnel. Vesper 9 hosted numerous predators, though most avoided humans after the initial colonization culls. The ferns rustled. Mara raised her weapon. What emerged was no native predator. A massive Draken warrior crashed through the vegetation, its scaled body glistening with something dark and viscous. Mara gasped, instinctively stepping backward. The creature stood over 2 meters tall, its powerful reptilian body covered in overlapping scales of deep crimson and obsidian. But what struck Mara most were the wounds, great gashes torn across its chest and abdomen, revealing paler flesh beneath. The Draken's slitted eyes locked onto her. Its mouth opened, revealing rows of serrated teeth. But instead of the roar she expected, a wet cough escaped its lips. Dark fluid, blood, she realized, spattered the ground, Human, it rasped in heavily accented standard. Run. Danger. Then, the massive creature collapsed forward, crashing to the jungle floor with enough force to shake the ground beneath Mara's feet. For a long moment, she stood frozen, pulse pistol still trained on the fallen warrior. Her mind raced through protocols. Draken were forbidden from making planetfall on research colonies without prior notification. Their presence here was either a violation of treaty or, more troubling, sanctioned by authorities far above Voss's clearance level. Her communicator buzzed again. "Calder, you're out of time. Shuttle's waiting. Get moving." Mara stared at the fallen Draken. It was clearly dying, its breathing becoming more labored with each passing second. Colony regulations were explicit. No contact with Draken military personnel without official authorization. She should leave, report the encounter. Let whatever Draken patrol was surely nearby handle their wounded. But something in the warrior's warning nagged at her. Danger. Not from the Draken, but something else. "I'm delayed," she told Voss. "Equipment malfunction. Need another 10 minutes. Before Voss could object, Mara muted the communicator and approached the fallen warrior. Up close, the Draken was even more intimidating. The crimson patterns on its scales formed intricate designs she recognized from intelligence briefings. This was no ordinary soldier, but a member of the elite Scaleblood clan, the hegemony's most feared warriors. The wounds were unlike anything she'd seen before, not clean cuts from blades or burns from energy weapons, but savage tears in the tough hide, as though something had ripped through the armored scales with brute force. The Draken's eyes fluttered open as she knelt beside it. "I said, run," it growled, clawed hand weakly reaching for a weapon no longer at its side. "I'm a doctor," Mara said, keeping her voice calm despite the hammering of her heart. "A healer. Let me help you." The Draken made a sound between a laugh and a cough, more dark blood speckling its jaw. "No help. For Croth." It tapped a clawed finger against a medallion embedded in its chest armor. "Scale blood dies with honor." Mara was already digging through her field kit. "Honor is fine, but living is better." She pulled out a slender case containing her experimental nanogel. The colony's research mandate covered xenobiology and medical applications. This regenerative compound was her personal project, designed to adapt to various physiologies. It was untested on Draken biology. It might do nothing, or worse, accelerate the warrior's death. But doing nothing guaranteed the same outcome. "What attacked you?" she asked, preparing the applicator. The Draken, Croth, if that was its name, shuddered. "Came from trees. Fast. Strong. Not prey." Its breathing hitched. "Others. Dead." "A patrol wiped out?" Mara's concern deepened. Nothing on their ecological surveys indicated predators capable of taking down armed Draken warriors. No time to puzzle it out now. She activated the nanogel, which glowed with a soft blue light. "This might hurt," she warned, "but it should stabilize you until your people can arrive." The Draken's eyes widened at the sight of the glowing gel. "Sorcery," it hissed, but was too weak to resist as Mara applied the compound to the worst of the wounds. The gel spread, seeping into the tears in the scaled hide, its luminescence pulsing in rhythm with the warrior's heartbeat. Croth's body went rigid, a low growl emanating from deep in its chest. Mara held her breath, watching as the nanogel worked to assess and adapt to the alien physiology. For a terrible moment, she thought she'd made a fatal mistake. Then the Draken relaxed, its breathing steadying. The bleeding slowed, then stopped. "What have you done?" Croth asked, voice slightly stronger. "Temporary patch," Mara explained, applying more gel to secondary wounds. "It won't heal you completely, but it should keep you alive until proper medical help arrives." The Draken's slitted pupils dilated slightly. "Why would human
Help, Scaleblood.
Mara met the creature's gaze steadily.
Because you needed it.
A look of confusion crossed the reptilian features, so human in its expression that Mara was momentarily startled. Before either could speak again, her communicator crackled to life, Voss's voice cutting through without preamble. "Calder! Emergency evac, now! Sensors show multiple large lifeforms converging on your position." Mara glanced at her scanner. Nothing. But the colony's satellite systems had wider range. "Can you move?" she asked Croth. The Draken struggled to rise, managing to get to one knee before sinking back down. "Leave," it said. "Scaleblood faces death alone."
"Nobility's overrated,"
Mara muttered, slinging her pack to the ground and retrieving a small device. She activated the emergency beacon, which would lead the shuttle directly to them. "And I've invested too much nanogel in you to walk away now." A distant sound reached them, a high-pitched keening that raised the hair on Mara's arms. Croth's reaction was immediate. Despite its wounds, the warrior's hand shot out, gripping Mara's wrist with surprising strength. "The hunter returns," it growled. "Hide, now!" Mara didn't argue. She helped drag the massive Draken toward a hollow beneath the exposed roots of a giant tree, squeezing them both into the cramped space just as the keening sound grew louder. Through gaps in the roots, Mara watched as something moved at the edge of the clearing. At first, she couldn't process what she was seeing. The creature blended almost perfectly with the jungle, its outline shimmering like heat waves over desert sand. Only its movement, a fluid, predatory stalking, made it visible at all.
"What is that?"
she whispered. Croth's voice was barely audible. "Not in your records. Ancient enemy of my people. Thought extinct." The creature paused, raising what might have been a head. Mara held her breath. After what seemed an eternity, the hunter moved on, its keening call fading as it disappeared into the jungle. "It hunts by movement and heat," Croth explained. "Your medicine makes me colder. It could not detect." Mara hadn't designed the nanogel to lower body temperature, but Draken physiology clearly responded differently than expected. A fortunate side effect. Her communicator vibrated. A text message from Voss. "Shuttle diverted by unidentified aerial contact. Return to base on foot. Sending coordinates for safe route." Mara showed the message to Croth. "My people can't reach us, and you can't walk far, but my base has medical facilities." The Draken's expression hardened. "No. Contact my ship." It tapped the medallion again. "Tracking beacon. They will come."
"And how long will that take?" Mara challenged. "That creature could return, or there might be more of them. You said your patrol was wiped out."
Croth looked away, and Mara recognized the expression of a warrior facing an impossible situation. Pride, warring with survival.
"The colony is 3 kilometers southwest," she continued, softening her tone. "I can help you get there. Once you're stabilized, we can contact your people properly."
After a long moment, the Draken gave a single, sharp nod. "Lead, human healer. Croth will follow." Getting the massive warrior upright proved challenging, but Draken were nothing if not determined. Once standing, Croth leaned heavily against a makeshift staff Mara fashioned from a fallen branch. Progress was agonizingly slow, each step clearly causing the warrior pain despite the nanogel's numbing effects. They paused frequently to apply more gel and to listen for signs of the hunter. Twice they hid as the creature's keening call echoed through the jungle, but it did not find them. As they traveled, an uneasy alliance formed between them. Croth, perhaps recognizing the debt owed for Mara's aid, began pointing out dangers in their path. Toxic plants, hidden sinkholes, areas where predators might lurk. "Your colony," the Draken said during one rest period. "Why here? Far from your kind." Mara checked the warrior's wounds, noting with satisfaction that the nanogel continued to hold. "Research. Vesper 9 has unique ecosystems, medical applications. Croth made a sound that might have been a laugh. Always searching, humans. Always digging into what should remain buried.
Is that why your patrol was here? Mara asked carefully. Something buried?
The Draken's expression closed off. Scale blood business, not for human ears.
Before Mara could press further, her scanner beeped. They'd reached the edge of the colony's security perimeter. She activated her communicator. Voss, it's Calder. I'm approaching the southern perimeter. I have a situation.
Define situation,
came the immediate reply. Mara glanced at Croth, who watched her with unreadable reptilian eyes.
I've encountered a wounded Draken warrior. Elite caste, Scaleblood clan. There's something in the jungle that attacked their patrol. Something dangerous. Silence stretched for so long that Mara thought the connection had failed. Finally, Voss's voice returned, tight with controlled anger. You've violated at least 7 protocols. Doctor, direct contact with Draken military is expressly forbidden without... Captain, Mara interrupted. With respect, we have bigger problems. This warrior is badly wounded, and whatever attacked them is still out there. I've seen it. It's like nothing in our records. Another pause. Bring the Draken to the South Medical Airlock. Security will meet you. Voss out. Mara slipped the communicator back onto her belt. My captain is concerned about your presence. Croth straightened as much as its wounds allowed. As your captain should be. Scaleblood do not come in peace. The statement hung between them as they continued toward the colony perimeter. Mara wanted to ask more, but sensed the warrior had already said more than intended. The colony of Vesper 9 appeared before them as they crested a small rise, a cluster of gleaming white structures, nestled in a clearing, surrounded by a high perimeter fence. Solar collectors dotted the rooftops, and communication arrays pointed skyward, small, but impressive for a research outpost so far from the central systems. As promised, a security team waited at the southern airlock, 4 officers in lightweight armor, pulse rifles held ready but not aimed directly at them. Mara raised a hand in greeting.
Captain Voss, she called, recognizing the tall, angular figure at the center of the group.
Lynn Voss stepped forward, dark eyes taking in the massive Draken leaning on Mara's shoulder. Despite being nearly 2 meters tall herself, the captain had to look up to meet Croth's gaze.
I am Captain Lynn Voss, governor of Vesper 9 Research Colony, she said formally.
Your presence here is unexpected. Warrior of the Scaleblood.
Croth straightened, wincing visibly at the movement.
Croth, 4th Talon of Scaleblood clan, on mission sanctioned by the High Conclave.
The Draken's voice was strained, but carried the unmistakable pride of its kind.
This human healer aided me when she could have left me to die. Honor demands I acknowledge this.
Voss's expression revealed nothing, but Mara knew the captain well enough to recognize surprise in the slight raising of her eyebrow.
Dr. Calder has always had a problematic tendency to ignore protocols when they conflict with her personal ethics, Voss said dryly. Nevertheless, we will provide medical assistance. Please surrender any weapons before entering. Croth gestured to its torn armor. Lost in combat. The hunter took them as trophies.
The hunter? Voss looked to Mara.
Some kind of predator, Mara explained.
Camouflaged, nearly invisible. It wiped out an entire Draken patrol.
This information visibly disturbed the captain. Inside, now. All of you. Dr. Zhang is preparing the medical bay.
As they passed through the airlock's decontamination chamber, Mara noticed the security officers maintaining a careful distance from Croth. Few humans had direct contact with the Draken. Most knew them only through official broadcasts or military reports. In person, the warrior's presence filled the chamber with a primal intensity that no recording could capture. The medical bay was the colony's pride, a state-of-the-art facility with equipment designed to handle both human patients and Vesper 9's native fauna. Dr. Min Zhang, the colony's chief medical officer, had already prepared the reinforced examination table typically used for the larger predatory species they occasionally studied. Zheng, a compact man with methodical movements, showed no hesitation as Croth was helped onto the table. "Fascinating," he murmured, immediately examining the nanogel-covered wounds. "Dr. Calder, your experimental compound appears to have formed an effective seal with the epithelial layer. Remarkable adaptation to non-human tissue." "Thank you for stating the obvious, Min," Voss said tersely. "Can you treat these wounds properly?" Zheng nodded, already preparing instruments. "The base biology is reptilian, albeit highly evolved. I can synthesize appropriate antibiotics and growth factors." He glanced at Mara. "Your nanogel has done most of the hard work already, stabilizing the patient and preventing infection." Croth watched these proceedings with evident discomfort, not from pain, but from the indignity of being discussed like a specimen. The warrior's slitted eyes found Mara's. "Human healer," it said, drawing her closer. "You have done what no other of your kind would dare. Remember this day." Before Mara could respond, Voss stepped between them. "Dr. Calder needs to be debriefed. Dr. Zhang will complete your treatment." Mara wanted to object, but knew that look in Voss's eyes. She nodded to Croth. "I'll return later to check on you." The captain led her from the medical bay to the small conference room adjacent to the command center. As soon as the door closed, Voss rounded on her. "Explain yourself, Doctor, and I suggest you make it convincing." Mara sank into a chair, suddenly aware of the exhaustion weighing on her limbs. "What would you have had me do, Lin? Leave a sentient being to die? When that sentient being is a member of the hegemony's elite military caste? Yes." Voss leaned against the table. "Do you understand what you've done? Draken do not accept help. They consider it a humiliation. You may have saved that warrior's body, but you've destroyed its honor." "That's ridiculous," Mara objected. "Croth specifically acknowledged the debt, which makes this even more complicated." Voss ran a hand through her short gray hair. "Draken do not acknowledge debts to lesser species, which is how they classify everyone else. If this Croth publicly recognized your aid, something else is happening here." Mara thought back to their conversation in the jungle. It mentioned a mission sanctioned by their High Conclave. Something about an ancient enemy they thought extinct. Voss's expression darkened. "The creature you saw." "Yes. And Croth seemed surprised it wasn't in our records." "Because this moon has been thoroughly surveyed," Voss said, activating the room's display screen. "Every predator, every microbe cataloged and studied. Nothing matches your description." Mara leaned forward. "What if it's not native to Vesper 9? What if the Draken brought it here, or were hunting it?" Voss was silent for a long moment. "I've sent a message to Central Command, but we're 3 weeks from the nearest relay. Until then, we need to contain this situation." She fixed Mara with a stern look. "The Draken stays in medical isolation. You are not to speak with it without my presence. Is that clear?" "Crystal," Mara replied, knowing full well she would disregard the order at the first opportunity. "What about the creature in the jungle?" "Security teams are doubling patrols and reinforcing the perimeter. All research expeditions are suspended until further notice." Voss straightened. "Get some rest, Doctor. You look dead on your feet." Mara couldn't argue with that assessment. She returned to her quarters, a Spartan room dominated by specimen containers and data terminals rather than personal effects. After a quick shower to wash away the jungle grime, she collapsed onto her bed. Sleep claimed her immediately, but brought no rest, only dreams of invisible hunters and reptilian eyes watching from the shadows. She woke to the blaring of alarms. Disoriented, Mara fumbled for the light, checking the time. 0247 hours. She'd been asleep less than 3 hours.
The colony's emergency system continued its rhythmic warning as she pulled on a fresh uniform and rushed into the corridor. Other colonists were emerging from their quarters, faces tense with confusion. Mara caught the arm of a passing technician. "What's happening?" "Perimeter breach," the young woman answered, voice tight with fear. "Southern quadrant, some kind of attack." Mara's thoughts immediately went to Croth. She changed direction, heading for the medical bay instead of the command center. The corridors were chaos, security personnel rushing toward the breach point, researchers seeking shelter in designated safe rooms. When she reached the medical wing, she found Dr. Zhang barricading the main entrance.
"Min, what's going on?"
Zhang looked up, relief crossing his features. "Mara, help me with this." He was pushing a heavy storage cabinet against the doors. Mara added her strength to his, and together they secured the entrance.
"Is it the hunter?"
she asked once they'd finished. Zhang shook his head. "Worse. Draken warship entered orbit 20 minutes ago. They're demanding the return of their warrior. When Captain Voss explained the situation, they accused us of taking a hostage." Mara's blood ran cold. "That's insane. We saved Croth's life." "They don't see it that way." Zhang led her deeper into the medical wing. "They've sent troops to retrieve him. The captain is trying to negotiate, but—" An explosion shook the building, cutting him off. Dust rained from the ceiling. "Where is Croth now?" Mara demanded. "Isolation room 3. But Mara, you can't—" She was already moving, ignoring Zhang's protests. The isolation ward was at the far end of the medical wing, separated from the main facility by a series of containment doors designed to prevent the spread of potential pathogens. As she approached the final door, she heard voices, one the distinctive rumble of Draken speech, drawing her access card. Mara unlocked the door and stepped inside. Croth was awake, propped up on the reinforced bed. The warrior's wounds were now properly dressed, synthetic skin grafts covering the worst of the damage. Beside the bed stood another Draken, this one uninjured and fully armed, wearing the elaborate armor of a high-ranking officer. Both turned as Mara entered. The officer's hand went to the weapon at its hip, but Croth made a sharp gesture, stopping the movement. "The healer," Croth said, its voice stronger than before. "Approach. Human." Mara stepped forward, ignoring the aggressive posture of the officer. "You're looking better. Your colony's medicine is adequate," Croth replied, something almost like amusement in its tone. "This is Fleet Commander Varks, my superior." Varks was even larger than Croth, its scales a deeper crimson with gold patterns denoting high rank. The commander studied Mara with open disdain. "So this is the human who interfered with Scaleblood affairs," it said in flawless standard. "You have caused a diplomatic incident, Dr. Calder." "By saving a life?" Mara challenged, matching the commander's gaze despite the fear coursing through her. "Where I come from, that's called basic decency." "Where you come from is irrelevant," Varks snarled. "Croth's mission was classified. By involving yourself, you have compromised hegemony security." Another explosion, closer this time, shook the room. Varks seemed unconcerned by the attack his own forces were conducting. "Your people resist the retrieval of our warrior," the commander continued. "This can only end one way." "Call off your troops," Mara insisted. "Captain Voss was attempting to contact your ship when I left. There's no need for violence." Varks made a dismissive gesture. "Humans always believe words can solve what only strength can settle." "Enough!" Croth's voice cut through the tension. The wounded warrior struggled to sit more upright. "Commander, this human saved me when her protocols demanded she leave me to die. She risked herself to bring me to safety when the hunter stalked us." "And you allowed this?" Varks demanded, incredulity evident, even through his reptilian features. "You accepted aid from a lesser species?" Croth's expression hardened. "I accepted aid from one who showed courage worthy of the Scaleblood. The ancient texts speak of such rare beings among other races." Varks hissed in displeasure,
but did not contradict the wounded warrior. There was clearly a hierarchy at work that Mara didn't fully understand. Despite Varx's superior rank, Kroth's status as a scale-blood elite carried its own authority. "The hunter," Mara interjected. "What is it? Why isn't it in our records?" Both Draken turned to her. Kroth looked to Varx, who after a moment gave a curt nod. "It is called Calvrax in our tongue," Kroth explained. "The silent death. It hunted the Draken homeworld before we achieved spaceflight. We believed them exterminated centuries ago." "Then how—" "Outlaws," Varx interrupted. "Rogue elements from the outer colonies have been capturing and breeding them, using them as weapons against hegemony interests." Mara processed this. "So your mission was to investigate reports of Calvrax activity in this system," Kroth confirmed. "We did not expect to find a fully mature hunter. They are formidable." "Clearly," Mara said, glancing at Kroth's wounds. "But why here? Vesper 9 is a research colony. We have no military value." Varx and Kroth exchanged looks again. This time, it was the commander who answered. "Your colony sits upon ruins of interest to certain parties. Ancient technology buried beneath the surface. The outlaws seek this technology. The Calvrax was released to eliminate our investigation team." This was news to Mara. "Ruins. We've detected no artificial structures." "They are well hidden," Kroth said. "Buried for millennia. Our instruments are more specialized for such detection." Another explosion rocked the building, close enough that the medical equipment rattled on its mounts. Varx touched a communication device on his wrist. "Report!" the commander barked. A voice responded in the Draken language, too fast for Mara to catch. Varx's expression grew grave. "The Calvrax has breached your colony's perimeter," he told Mara. "My troops report multiple casualties." Fear gripped Mara's heart. "You have to stop the attack. Pull your forces back inside the colony. The perimeter defenses are our only protection against that thing." "Draken warriors do not retreat," Varx began, but Kroth cut him off. "Commander, the healer speaks truth. The Calvrax cannot be fought with conventional weapons. It hunts by detecting energy signatures. Your troops' weapons will only draw it to them." Varx hesitated, clearly torn between military doctrine and the reality of their situation. Finally, the commander activated his communicator again, issuing rapid orders in his native tongue. "I have commanded our forces to fall back to defensive positions within your colony," he informed Mara. "But make no mistake, this changes nothing about your interference in our affairs." Before Mara could respond, the door to the isolation room hissed open. Captain Voss stood in the doorway, a pulse rifle in her hands and a squad of security officers behind her. Her uniform was torn and smeared with soot, and a cut above her eye leaked blood down her face. "Dr. Calder," she said with remarkable calm, "I see you've disregarded my direct order. Again." "Captain," Mara began, but Voss cut her off with a sharp gesture. "We have a more immediate problem." The captain's gaze shifted to the Draken. "Your hunter has killed 3 of my people and 4 of your soldiers. It's moving through the colony's subsystems. Heading this way." Varx stepped forward, towering over the human captain. "My warriors will destroy this threat." "Your warriors are being hunted like game animals," Voss countered bluntly. "It's tracking their energy weapons, just as Dr. Calder reported." Mara moved between them before the confrontation could escalate. "We need to work together. The nanogel, it lowered Kroth's body temperature, made him invisible to the hunter. We could adapt it, create a compound that masks energy signatures." All eyes turned to her. Voss was the first to speak. "How quickly could you produce enough for the entire colony?" Mara calculated rapidly. "The medical synthesizers could generate the base compound in bulk. 2 hours, maybe 3 to produce enough." "We don't have 3 hours," Voss said grimly. "That thing is moving methodically through our systems, disabling power and life support as it goes." "What about my laboratory?" Mara suggested. It has dedicated power and equipment. I could produce a concentrated version more quickly, enough for a strike team. Varks interjected. My warriors require no human medicine. Your warriors are dying, Kroth said sharply from the bed. The healer's compound works. I have witnessed this. The wounded Draken struggled to stand, ignoring Zhang's protests. I will join this strike team. You are in no condition to fight, Varks objected. Kroth drew itself up to its full height, wincing but refusing to show weakness. I am Scaleblood. While breath remains, so does duty. The intensity of the moment was broken by an alarm on Zhang's console. The doctor rushed to check it, his face paling as he read the display. Central life support is failing, he reported. Emergency systems are engaged, but they'll only last 12 hours. Voss made a decision. Dr. Calder, you have 1 hour to produce your compound. Commander Varks, I suggest you select your best warriors for the strike team, ones who can follow orders about energy weapon use. The Draken commander bristled, but gave a curt nod. 4 of my elite guard will accompany us. Us? Mara questioned. I will lead this mission personally, Varks stated. Draken honor demands it. Voss looked like she wanted to object, but instead turned to Mara. Go. Now. We'll meet in your lab in 20 minutes with the strike team. As Mara hurried toward her laboratory, the colony around her was transforming from research outpost to battlefield. Emergency lighting bathed the corridors in red, and researchers worked alongside security personnel to fortify key areas. Fear was evident on every human face, but so was determination. Her laboratory was as she'd left it days earlier, organized chaos of equipment and specimens. Mara immediately began the process of synthesizing a modified version of her nanogel, one designed specifically to mask energy signatures rather than heal wounds. 18 minutes later, the door slid open to admit Captain Voss, Commander Varks, and 4 Draken warriors, whose elaborate scale patterns marked them as elite guards. Kroth followed, moving slowly but steadily, its determination evident in every labored step. Dr. Zhang cleared you for duty? Mara asked skeptically. Dr. Zhang, Voss said dryly, was overruled by considerations of interspecies diplomacy. Mara understood the subtext. Better to have the wounded Draken with them than risk further conflict by attempting to confine it to medical care. How does your compound work? Varks demanded, watching as Mara filled injectors with the glowing blue gel. It creates a film over the body that adapts to the host's biological signatures, she explained, simplifying the complex xenobiology. This modified version should mask both heat and energy emissions. The hunter won't be able to detect us. Should? One of the Draken guards questioned, suspicion evident. Nothing is certain when dealing with a life form we barely understand, Mara replied evenly. But it worked for Kroth in the jungle. Voss stepped forward. What's the application method? Mara held up an injector. Intramuscular. 1 dose should last approximately 4 hours based on my calculations. The captain extended her arm. Demonstrate! Without hesitation. Mara pressed the injector against Voss's exposed forearm. The device hissed as it delivered the nanogel. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, a faint blue luminescence spread beneath the captain's skin, gradually fading until it was imperceptible except under direct scrutiny. Feels cold, Voss noted. That's intentional, Mara confirmed. It's lowering your surface temperature while maintaining core functions. The Draken warriors watched this demonstration with varying degrees of skepticism. Varks was the first to step forward, extending a scaled arm. If your compound harms my warriors, human, your entire colony will answer for it. Mara met his gaze steadily. It won't. One by one, she administered the nanogel to each member of the strike team. The Draken bodies absorbed the compound differently than human physiology, their scales taking on a subtle iridescence before returning to normal appearance. Our target is the Central Environmental Control System.
Voss explained, once everyone was treated. Colony schematics show the hunter has been disabling subsystems in sequence. That's where it will strike next. What weapons will be effective against this creature? Varks asked. Croth answered, before Mara could. No energy weapons. They draw it. Blades and projectiles only. The commander nodded, issuing orders to his warriors in their native tongue. The guards unholstered their energy pistols, powering them down and securing them in favor of wicked-looking blades that extended from their wrist gauntlets. Voss distributed pulse rifles to the human members of the team, herself, Mara, and 2 security officers who had joined them. Power cells removed, she instructed. Use only in emergency, and be prepared to discard the weapon immediately after firing. As they prepared to leave the laboratory, Croth approached Mara. Healer, the warrior said quietly. If we fail, the hunter will kill everyone in this colony. Mara nodded grimly. Then we won't fail. The strike team moved through the increasingly dysfunctional colony with practiced stealth. Environmental systems were failing in sections, leaving some corridors frigid, while others sweltered in tropical heat. Emergency barriers had deployed in damaged areas, forcing them to take circuitous routes toward the central control hub. As they neared their destination, Voss raised a hand, signaling a halt. Ahead, the corridor was dark, emergency lighting disabled. From within that darkness came a soft, rhythmic sound, like liquid dripping onto metal. It's there, Croth whispered, the Draken's heightened senses detecting what the humans could not. Waiting. Varks conferred quietly with his warriors, their reptilian features unreadable to Mara. After a moment, the commander turned to Voss. We will draw it out, he said. When it attacks, strike from behind. Before anyone could object, the Draken commander stepped forward into the darkened corridor. His warriors spread out, moving with surprising silence despite their bulk. Stay here, Voss ordered Mara. Then she and the security officers took up flanking positions along the walls. For several heartbeats, nothing happened. Then, a soft keening, the same sound Mara had heard in the jungle, echoed from the darkness. Varks tensed, his clawed hands gripping his blade. The attack came with terrifying speed. One moment, there was only darkness. The next, a shimmering distortion in the air launched itself at the Draken commander. Varks roared, slashing with his blade. The weapon connected with something solid, drawing a screech from the attacker. Chaos erupted. The Draken warriors converged, their blades flashing in the dim light. The hunter, now partially visible as the nanogel on Varks's blade, disrupted its camouflage, moved with unnatural agility. Its form, a nightmare of segmented limbs and gleaming eyes. Mara watched in horror as one of the Draken guards was lifted bodily and slammed against the ceiling with enough force to crack the reinforced panels. The warrior fell limply to the floor, unmoving. Voss and her officers circled, looking for an opening. The captain had drawn a hunting knife, the blade gleaming dully in the emergency lights. We need to help them, Mara said, reaching for her own knife. Wait, Voss commanded. We need a clear target. The fight moved deeper into the darkness as the Draken warriors drove the creature back through sheer ferocity. Mara lost sight of them, hearing only the sounds of combat, roars of pain and rage from the Draken, inhuman screeches from the hunter. Then silence. Captain, one of the security officers whispered, should we? A massive impact shook the floor beneath them. Something large hurtled out of the darkness, crashing into the wall beside Mara. It was Commander Varks, his armor shredded, deep gashes across his chest. The Draken struggled to rise, dark blood pooling beneath him. It adapts, he growled. Learns our movements. From the darkness came Croth's voice, raised in what could only be a Draken battle cry. The wounded warrior had evidently joined the fight despite its injuries. Voss made a decision. Move in. Converge on Croth's position. They advanced cautiously, the security officers taking point.
The corridor opened into the Environmental Control Center, a vast chamber filled with humming machinery and control stations. Emergency lighting cast everything in a crimson glow, creating deep shadows between the equipment. The remaining Draken warriors were scattered across the room, one lying motionless near an overturned console, another dragging itself toward a fallen weapon. Of Kroth, there was no sign. "Where's the hunter?" Mara whispered, scanning the shadows. A gurgling sound drew her attention upward. There, suspended from the ceiling, was the creature, fully visible now, its camouflage disrupted by multiple wounds. It was unlike anything Mara had ever seen, a nightmare amalgamation of insectoid and reptilian features. Its segmented body supported by multiple limbs, ending in gleaming claws. In those claws, it held Kroth. The Draken warrior was alive but grievously wounded, fresh gashes torn across its already damaged body. As they watched in horror, the hunter began to squeeze, clearly intending to crush its prey. Without thinking, Mara grabbed an emergency flare from her belt, activated it, and hurled it across the room. The sudden burst of intense light and heat immediately attracted the creature's attention. It dropped Kroth, head swiveling toward the new threat. "Everyone down!" Voss shouted, as the hunter launched itself toward them. Mara dove behind a console, feeling the rush of air as the creature passed overhead. It landed where she had been standing moments before, claws gouging deep furrows in the metal flooring. The security officers opened fire, their weapons, now loaded with power cells, sending pulses of energy toward the hunter. The creature screeched, its camouflage flickering as it absorbed the impacts. But rather than injuring it, the energy seemed to strengthen the beast. It grew more solid, more present, as though feeding on the weapon discharge. "Cease fire!" Voss commanded. "It's absorbing the energy." Too late. The hunter moved with renewed speed, seizing one of the officers and impaling him on a blade-like appendage. The man's scream cut off abruptly as he was tossed aside like discarded refuse. Mara scrambled away, mind racing. The nanogel had hidden them from detection, but once the creature found them, it was proving near impossible to kill. Unless... "Captain," she called, "the nanogel. If we can get enough of it into the creature's system, it might disrupt whatever allows it to absorb energy." Voss nodded grimly, understanding immediately. "We need to deliver a massive dose directly." Mara looked to where her laboratory case lay, thrown aside in the chaos. Inside were the remaining injectors of nanogel, enough for perhaps 3 more applications. "Cover me," she told Voss, then sprinted across the open floor. The hunter sensed her movement, turning with frightening speed. Mara felt, rather than saw, the creature launch itself toward her. She reached the case, fingers closing around an injector, just as something slammed into her from behind, sending her sprawling. Pain exploded across her back as the hunter's claws raked her flesh. Mara rolled, bringing the injector up in a desperate defensive movement. The creature loomed over her, its alien features mere centimeters from her face. A maw, lined with needle-like teeth, opened, viscous fluid dripping onto her cheek. Then, a massive form crashed into the hunter, driving it away from Mara. Kroth, somehow still standing despite its wounds, had thrown itself bodily at the creature. The Draken warrior grappled with the hunter, massive scaled hands closing around its segmented limbs. "Now, healer!" Kroth roared. "Strike now!" Mara scrambled to her feet, ignoring the burning pain across her back. She lunged forward, injector raised, and plunged it into the creature's body where Kroth had exposed what appeared to be a vulnerable junction between segments. The hunter's reaction was immediate and violent. It convulsed, throwing Kroth aside with such force that the Draken warrior crashed through a control panel in a shower of sparks. The creature's camouflage failed completely, its body becoming fully visible, and then beginning to change. Where the nanogel spread from the injection site, the hunter's exoskeleton began to crack and split. Blue luminescence traced patterns across its body, following what must be its circulatory system.
The creature thrashed in evident agony, its keening cry rising to a pitch that forced Mara to cover her ears. Then, with a final convulsion, the hunter collapsed. Its body continued to transform, the nanogel breaking down its cellular structure from within, until all that remained was a rapidly dissolving mass on the control room floor. Silence fell, broken only by the labored breathing of the survivors. Voss approached cautiously, knife still ready, but it was clear the threat had ended. "Is it dead?" the remaining security officer asked. "More than dead," Mara replied, staring at the dissolving remains. The nanogel adapted to its biology and essentially unmade it. "I didn't know it could do that." "You saved us all," Voss acknowledged, helping Mara to her feet. But Mara's thoughts were already elsewhere. "Croth," she said, turning to where the Draken warrior had fallen. They found Croth, slumped against a damaged console, dark blood pooling beneath the massive body. The warrior's breathing was shallow, scales dulling as life ebbed away. Mara knelt beside the fallen Draken, medical training taking over as she assessed the wounds. They were catastrophic, even worse than those sustained in the jungle. No amount of nanogel would save the warrior now. "Leave me," Croth rasped, slitted eyes focusing on Mara with difficulty. "A Scaleblood. Dies with honor." "You fought with honor," Mara assured the dying warrior, taking its massive clawed hand in her own. "You saved my life. A debt. Repaid." Croth's breathing hitched. "But a greater debt remains." Commander Varks had dragged himself to Croth's side, his own wounds severe, but not immediately life-threatening. The Draken commander watched the exchange with unreadable eyes. "What debt speaks the fourth talent of Scaleblood?" Varks asked formally, using what Mara recognized as ritual language. Croth's gaze remained fixed on Mara. "She saved me. When none would, showed courage. Worthy of the Scaleblood." The warrior's free hand moved to the medallion embedded in its armor, fingers leaving bloody smears on the ancient metal. "I invoke the Oath of Wormblood." Varks drew in a sharp breath, his reptilian features showing shock for the first time. "Consider carefully, warrior. The oath has not been invoked in 7 generations." "I die, with clear mind and purpose," Croth insisted. "The oath is sworn." The medallion beneath the warrior's fingers began to glow with an inner light, patterns within the metal, shifting and reforming. Croth's voice strengthened momentarily, taking on a resonant quality that seemed to fill the chamber. "By blood and scale, by claw and fire, I bind the Scaleblood clan to the defense of Mara Calder, healer of worlds. Her life is our honor, her enemies our prey, until stars burn cold and worlds turn to dust." The medallion flared brilliantly, then dimmed. Croth's hand fell away, strength fading. "It is done," Varks murmured, voice hushed with what might have been awe. Mara looked between the two Draken, confusion evident. "What's done? What oath?" But Croth's attention was fading, the warrior's life nearly spent. "Remember, healer," the Draken whispered, "you never stand alone again." With those words, the mighty warrior exhaled a final breath. The massive body went still, scales losing their luster as life departed. Mara bowed her head, unexpected grief tightening her throat. This alien being, this feared warrior of a hostile species, had given its life to save hers. The universe suddenly seemed both larger and stranger than she had ever imagined. Varks rose slowly, his wounds temporarily forgotten as he performed what appeared to be a ritual gesture over Croth's body, clawed hand forming intricate patterns in the air above the fallen warrior. "The oath is witnessed," the commander intoned. "The Scaleblood honor their word." "What oath?" Mara asked again, looking up at the towering Draken. "What did Croth do?" Varks regarded her with an expression she couldn't interpret. "The Oath of Wormblood is ancient,
From before our people reach the stars. It binds an entire clan to the protection of one who has earned their highest respect. The commander's voice held a mixture of reluctance and something like wonder. No non-Draken has ever been granted this honor. Captain Voss had joined them, her expression grave as she listened. What does this mean in practical terms, Commander? Varks straightened despite his injuries, suddenly formal. It means, Captain, that Dr. Mara Calder is now under the protection of the Scaleblood clan. Any threat to her is a threat to all Draken who bear our markings. He gestured to the distinctive patterns on his scales. It means your colony is now under our protection as well, as her home. Mara stared at the commander in disbelief. Because I tried to save Kroth's life. No, Varks corrected. Because you showed courage that a Scaleblood warrior deemed worthy of respect. Because you faced the ancient enemy of our people without hesitation. Because you fought beside us with honor. The commander's tone softened slightly. These things matter to the Scaleblood more than politics or species. 3 days later, Mara stood in Vesper 9's small docking bay, watching as Draken warriors loaded Kroth's body, now encased in an ornate burial pod, aboard their shuttle. The colony was slowly returning to normal, environmental systems repaired and security restored. But nothing would truly be the same again. Captain Voss stood beside her, arms folded as she observed the proceedings. Central Command finally responded to our communications, the captain said. They're sending a diplomatic team to formalize the new relationship with the hegemony. Mara nodded absently, her attention on the Draken funeral procession. They still don't entirely believe our report. Can you blame them? Voss asked wryly. One xenobiologist defies protocols, saves a hostile alien, and suddenly the most feared military force in known space is offering protection instead of conquest? She shook her head. It reads like bad fiction. And yet, here we are, Mara said softly. Commander Varks approached them, his wounds bandaged, but his bearing as proud as ever. The Draken commander had proven surprisingly cooperative in the aftermath of the battle, ordering his forces to assist with colony repairs and establishing communications with the Hegemony Central Command. The funeral ship departs within the hour, Varks informed them. Kroth will be returned to the homeworld for the rites of ascension. Your warrior died with great courage, Voss said formally. Vesper 9 honors his sacrifice. Varks inclined his head, accepting the tribute. There is another matter, he continued, turning to Mara. The High Conclave has summoned you to appear before them. Mara blinked in surprise. Me? Why? The Oath of Wormblood must be formally recognized, the commander explained. It is tradition. Voss frowned. Dr. Calder is essential personnel. The colony needs... It is not a request, Captain, Varks interrupted, though without hostility. The summons of the High Conclave cannot be denied, especially in matters of clan honor. Mara touched Voss's arm reassuringly. It's all right, Lynn, I'll go. She looked to Varks. When do we leave? Tomorrow. A diplomatic vessel will arrive to transport you. The commander hesitated, then added, You need not fear, Dr. Calder. The oath protects you even in the heart of Draken space. After Varks had departed to oversee the final preparations, Voss turned to Mara with concern evident in her eyes. Are you certain about this? No human has ever entered Draken Central Space and returned. Mara gazed out at the stars, visible through the docking bay's massive viewport. No human has ever been bound by the Oath of Wormblood before. Either. We're in uncharted territory. Lynn. That's what worries me, Voss admitted. The Draken are historically unpredictable, regardless of oaths or honors. Mara thought of Kroth's final words, the assurance that she would never stand alone again. I think we've misunderstood them, she said slowly. Their honor is everything to them. If the oath is as sacred as Varks implies, they'll honor it. And if they don't? Mara smiled grimly. Then I'll have made a fascinating discovery about Draken culture. Isn't that what I'm here for? The Draken diplomatic vessel that arrived the next day was unlike any ship Mara had seen before. Where human vessels tended toward functional designs, this craft was a work of art, its hull adorned with intricate patterns that mimicked the scale markings of the Scaleblood clan. Inside, the ship was equally impressive. The corridors were higher and wider than human standards, accommodating the Draken's larger frames, but also beautifully appointed with materials that resembled polished bone and scaled hide. Mara was given quarters that had clearly been adapted for human use, the temperature raised to comfortable levels, the massive sleeping platform replaced with a human-sized bed. The attention to detail surprised her. The Draken had a reputation for viewing other species as beneath such considerations. During the week-long journey to the Draken homeworld, Mara was treated with a mixture of wary respect and intense curiosity. The ship's crew, all bearing the distinctive markings of the Scaleblood clan, seemed to regard her as something between an honored guest and a fascinating specimen. Commander Varks, who had accompanied her as official escort, explained that most of the crew had never interacted directly with humans before. The hegemony maintains separation between species when possible, the commander told her during a shared meal in his quarters. It prevents complications. Like finding out we're not the inferior beings your propaganda claims, Mara suggested, emboldened by days of relatively civil interaction. To her surprise, Varks made a sound that might have been a laugh. Perhaps, or like discovering that some among you might be worthy of respect. The Draken homeworld, when they finally reached it, was a study in contrasts. From orbit, it appeared as a world of deep reds and burnished golds, vast deserts interspersed with lush jungle regions near the equator. But as their shuttle descended, Mara was astounded by the cities, massive structures of gleaming metal and stone that rose organically from the landscape, as though grown rather than built. They landed at what Varks identified as the Temple of the High Conclave, the seat of Draken governance and spiritual authority. The structure was ancient, predating their expansion to the stars, its massive pillars carved from a single mountain face. "The conclave awaits," Varks informed her as they disembarked. "I will accompany you, but you must speak for yourself. Show no fear. They will sense it." Mara smoothed her uniform, the best she had brought from the colony, and nodded. "I'm ready." The chamber of the High Conclave was a vast circular space, its ceiling lost in shadows far above. Tiered seating rose along the walls, occupied by Draken of various clans, their scale patterns marking their affiliations. At the center was a raised dais, where 7 ancient Draken sat in ornate chairs that resembled stylized nests. As Mara entered, a hush fell over the assembled warriors and dignitaries. She felt hundreds of reptilian eyes tracking her movement as Varks escorted her to the center of the chamber. "The human healer, Mara Calder," Varks announced formally, voice carrying to the furthest reaches of the chamber. One of the ancient Draken on the dais rose, its scales faded with age, but still bearing the unmistakable patterns of the Scaleblood clan. When it spoke, its voice was surprisingly melodic. "I am High Seer Orath, eldest of the Scaleblood clan." He, Mara decided based on the timbre, introduced himself. "You stand before the High Conclave, human. Do you understand why you have been summoned?" Mara stepped forward, careful to keep her movements deliberate and her voice steady. "I understand that Croth of the Scaleblood clan invoked something called the Oath of Wormblood before his death. I am here to honor his final wishes." A murmur ran through the assembled Draken. Orath's expression was unreadable to Mara's human eyes, but his next words carried a hint of approval. "Well spoken. The Oath of Wormblood is not invoked lightly. It binds an entire clan to the protection and honor of one deemed worthy by a dying warrior." The ancient Draken gestured to a smaller figure beside him.
Witness Keeper Sorn holds the memory of Kroth's final moments. The smaller Draken, Sorn, stepped forward, holding what appeared to be the medallion from Kroth's armor. As Mara watched, the medallion began to glow, and a three-dimensional projection appeared above it, a perfect recording of Kroth's death scene. The assembled conclave watched in silence as the events unfolded. Mara tending the wounded warrior, the battle with the hunter, Kroth's sacrifice, and finally, the invocation of the oath. When the projection faded, the chamber remained silent for several heartbeats. Then, from the highest tier, a Draken warrior with elaborate scale markings rose. "This is unprecedented," the warrior declared. "The oath has never been extended to a non-Draken. It cannot be allowed." "The oath makes no distinction of species." War leader Thex, Oreth countered. "It speaks only of worthiness."
"A human cannot be worthy of scale blood honor," Thex insisted. Murmurs of both agreement and dissent rippled through the chamber. Mara remained still, understanding that this was a pivotal moment in Draken governance, a challenge to ancient traditions forced by her unexpected involvement. Another elder on the dais spoke, this one bearing markings of a different clan. "The human's actions should be considered. She saved a scale-blood warrior when she could have left him to die. She faced the Calvrax without Draken training or strength. She showed courage our own warriors would respect." "Out of ignorance, perhaps," a different voice called. "Humans are known to act without understanding consequences." Mara decided it was time to speak. She stepped forward, drawing all eyes back to her. "With respect," she began, voice clear and calm. "I understood exactly what I was doing when I saved Kroth. I knew he was Draken. I knew contact was forbidden. I chose to help anyway because that is who I am. A healer, sworn to preserve life where I can." She turned slowly, addressing the entire chamber. "I did not ask for your oath. I did not expect it. But Kroth gave it freely, with his dying breath. If you truly honor your fallen warrior, how can you dishonor his final act?" Silence fell again, heavier this time. Orath studied her with ancient eyes that seemed to see beyond her physical form. "You speak with wisdom unexpected in your kind," the High Seer acknowledged. "The question before the conclave is not whether the oath was properly given. The Witness Keeper confirms it was. The question is whether we will honor it, knowing it binds us to protect a human." From the shadows at the edge of the dais, another figure emerged, a female Draken, her scales a deeper crimson than any Mara had yet seen, with gold patterns that seemed to shift in the chamber's light. "I am Matriarch Lysix of the Scale Blood," she announced, her voice carrying effortless authority. "The oath transcends our politics and our prejudices. It has bound our clan since before we conquered the stars. If we abandon it now, we are no longer Scale Blood." Her gaze swept the chamber, challenging any to disagree. None did. "The human healer, Mara Calder, is under the protection of the Scale Blood clan." Lysix continued. "By extension, her colony falls under our aegis. This is the will of the clan." Orath nodded slowly. "The High Conclave acknowledges the oath of Wormblood. From this day forward, any action against Mara Calder or her home will be considered an action against the Scaleblood clan, with all the consequences such an offense entails." The pronouncement hung in the air like a physical thing. Mara felt the weight of it settle around her, the protection of the most feared warriors in known space, bound to her by ancient honor. "There is one final matter," Orath added, gesturing to Sorn. The Witness Keeper approached Mara, still holding Kroth's medallion. "The Oathgiver's mark must be carried by the Oath Receiver," Sorn explained, offering the medallion to Mara. "It identifies you to all Draken as one, under Scaleblood protection." Mara accepted the ancient artifact with reverence. As her fingers closed around it, the medallion warmed, the patterns within it shifting once more before settling into a new configuration, one that somehow melded Draken and human elements in its design.
Wear it always, Lysix instructed. It may save your life among those who do not know of today's proceedings.
3 months later, Mara stood on the observation deck of Vesper 9, watching as a Draken patrol ship departed after delivering supplies and updated research equipment. The colony had changed dramatically since her return from the Draken homeworld. Where once they had lived in isolation, now they were a hub of unprecedented interspecies cooperation. Draken scientists, a caste Mara hadn't even known existed, now worked alongside human researchers, sharing knowledge that had previously been jealously guarded. The ruins beneath the colony, which the Draken had originally sought to claim exclusively, were being jointly excavated, revealing technologies that predated both human and Draken civilization. Captain Voss joined her at the viewport, the colony governor's expression still sometimes betraying amazement at their changed circumstances.
The diplomatic corps is calling it the Calder Accord, Voss informed her, amusement evident in her tone. Apparently, you've become something of a legend in diplomatic circles.
Mara touched the medallion that hung at her throat, Kroth's final gift. Now, a symbol of unprecedented cooperation between species that had viewed each other with suspicion for generations.
"I just tried to save a life," she said softly. "Everything else was Kroth's doing."
"Perhaps," Voss acknowledged. "But it took both of you, a human willing to see past fear, and a Draken willing to acknowledge worth beyond their own kind." Beyond the viewport, the stars gleamed in the blackness, no longer representing barriers between species, but possibilities waiting to be explored together. Mara smiled, thinking of the wounded warrior whose final act had changed the course of interstellar relations. "He whispered that I would never stand alone again," she told Voss. "I don't think either of us understood just how profound that promise would be." The medallion warmed against her skin, as though acknowledging the truth of her words. In the vastness of space, ancient oaths and simple compassion had proven stronger than centuries of fear and mistrust. And somewhere, Mara liked to think, a Scaleblood warrior looked upon their work with pride.